In the long-neglected archives of the Wisconsin Diocese rests a collection of documents the Catholic Church has desperately tried to conceal for more than 160 years. These records document the methodical vanishing of 23 nuns from St. Mary's Convent, situated near the shores of Lake Michigan, throughout the period between 1854 and 1862. While church officials have consistently dismissed these papers as nothing more than administrative mistakes and innocent misinterpretations, the sworn statements from 3 separate diocesan investigators, combined with a hidden cache of personal letters uncovered within a sealed wall cavity during recent building work, presents an account so deeply unsettling that even veteran historians find themselves questioning whether such profound darkness could genuinely take root inside holy ground. Presenting now the first complete chronicle of what numerous scholars consider the most profoundly disturbing case of religious depravity in American history, a case the Catholic establishment has invested substantial resources to ensure you would never discover. Before we delve deeper into the unfolding events at St. Mary's Convent, I must extend a request. Should you find yourself already disturbed by this narrative, we warmly invite you to subscribe to our channel for additional historically grounded examinations of America's most concealed religious secrets. Our growing community of mystery enthusiasts stretches across all 50 states. We're curious where you're joining us from tonight. Please share your location in the comments section below. Let us now transport ourselves to the Wisconsin wilderness of 1854, where this narrative finds its beginning. The morning mist clung heavily to Lake Michigan as Bishop William Quarter's carriage passed through the entrance gates of what would eventually become St. Mary's Convent. The Catholic institution had acquired the expansive property, originally a wealthy lumber magnate's residence encircled by 30 acres of thick forest, with the purpose of creating the region's premier Catholic establishment within the predominantly Protestant Wisconsin territory. This calculated expansion formed part of a wider initiative to strengthen Catholic influence throughout America's quickly developing frontier territories, where Protestant denominations were already securing considerable influence. Constructed from limestone, the mansion with its 3 formidable extensions and prominent bell tower presented a sharp contrast to the modest wooden churches scattered across the Wisconsin landscape. The primary structure, completed in 1842, displayed Gothic arched windows and narrow openings that seemed to observe the surrounding countryside like watching eyes. 2 additions extended from each side, the eastern section designated for the sisters' living quarters, the western portion intended for the planned orphanage and medical facility. Behind the main building stood a modest chapel, its steeple extending above the tree line, visible for considerable distances across the level Wisconsin terrain. Local Protestant families regarded the newly arriving nuns with considerable distrust. Their black religious garments and Irish accents immediately identified them as outsiders within a region largely inhabited by German and Scandinavian immigrants. The area residents, predominantly Lutheran and Methodist, had become accustomed to the straightforward, democratic structure of their own religious organizations. The hierarchical organization of Catholicism, complete with its ceremonial practices and hidden aspects, seemed alien and menacing. Upon the convent's consecration day, a modest gathering assembled beyond the gates. Elijah Hoffman, a respected senior member of the local Lutheran congregation, muttered "Papists" under his breath as he observed the black-robed figures proceeding toward the chapel. "They'll introduce their foreign practices here, corrupt our young people with their idolatrous ways." His companion Wilhelm Schmidt responded with a grim nod. "My grandfather left Germany specifically to escape Catholic persecution. Now they pursue us even to this place." While not universally held, such sentiments reflected the profound religious divisions that would establish the context for the tragic events yet to unfold. Bishop Quarter announced to the assembled clergy and local dignitaries during the consecration ceremony, "St. Mary's will serve as a beacon of divine mercy throughout this wilderness." His words resonated through the freshly completed chapel where morning illumination filtered through simple colored glass windows, casting colored light across the wooden pews. Under Mother Superior Catherine Murphy's guidance, this convent will provide refuge for orphans, solace for widows, and healing for the sick. The bishop's distinctive Boston pronunciation echoed off the stone walls as he presented the 3 women who would direct the convent's operations: Mother Superior Catherine, Sister Elizabeth Foster, and Sister Margaret Clark, all arriving from established Eastern convents. Mother Superior Catherine presented an imposing figure in her immaculate black habit, her defined features and penetrating expression commanding immediate respect. At 42 years old, she conducted herself with the self-assurance of someone accustomed to exercising authority. Her hands, raised during prayer, appeared elegant yet strong, hands equally capable of comforting an infant or correcting a wayward postulant. Those who encountered her frequently remarked upon her distinctive pale blue eyes, described as possessing an almost supernatural ability to perceive beyond superficial appearances. The bishop continued, Mother Catherine arrives bearing the strongest possible endorsements. Her service at St. Augustine's in Boston has thoroughly equipped her for the challenges of frontier religious existence. Sister Elizabeth, 38, with her constant smile and gentle manner of speaking, would supervise the orphanage operations. With her plump, maternal appearance, rosy complexion, and gentle hands, she seemed ideally suited for caring for abandoned children. When she spoke, a slight hesitation always accompanied her words, as though she carefully weighed each expression, a characteristic initially interpreted as thoughtfulness rather than calculated intention. Sister Margaret, 35, possessing extensive familiarity with natural remedies, would direct the infirmary. Tall and slender with a solemn disposition and precise fingers, she moved with the exactness of someone who measured medications by individual drops. Her dark eyes observed everything, and her understanding of both conventional and alternative medical practices had earned admiration from physicians throughout Boston and New York. 20 younger sisters, predominantly in their 20s and recently arrived from Ireland, formed the remainder of the founding community. They stood in precise formation, habits pressed, heads properly bowed as Bishop Quarter pronounced blessings upon each individually. Sister Agnes O'Connor, Sister Bernarde Walsh, Sister Teresa Donovan, Sister Mary Collins, young women who had abandoned family and homeland to serve the divine in an unfamiliar nation. Their expressions, though appropriately solemn throughout the ceremony, occasionally revealed their youth and uncertainty when they believed themselves unobserved. That first evening, Mother Catherine addressed her community by candlelight, with shadows stretching across the dining hall. The aroma of fresh bread and weak tea lingered in the air while the Wisconsin autumn chill penetrated the stone walls despite the substantial fireplace at the room's far end. The Lord has summoned us to this wilderness. We will encounter difficulties unknown to our Eastern colleagues. We will face suspicion from those who fear our beliefs. But through dedication and self-denial, we shall prevail. The young sisters, distant from home and loved ones, grasped her words as essential support in this unfamiliar environment. That night, Sister Agnes whispered to Sister Bernarde as they prepared for rest, their narrow beds divided by barely an arm's length in the communal sleeping quarters. Her voice carried a slight tremor, exposing the brave countenance she had preserved throughout the day. Do you suppose the local people will ever accept us? In the darkness, Sister Bernarde clasped her hand reassuringly. They initially feared our Lord as well. Through our good works, we must demonstrate that we intend only benefit. The whispered exchange concluded abruptly at the sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway, Mother Catherine conducting her evening inspection, confirming everything properly arranged for their initial night. The convent rapidly established itself as a functioning religious community. Daily prayer rhythms commenced with matins at 3 a.m., the bell tolls penetrating the pre-dawn darkness, summoning drowsy sisters from warm beds to frigid chapel floors. The distinctive cadence of Latin chants filled the chapel 7 times daily, from those early morning devotions through Compline at 9 p.m. This sound became as characteristic of the local environment as wine through pine trees or distant cattle lowing. Between prayer periods, the sisters operated a modest orphanage for abandoned children, cared for the sick in a basic infirmary, and maintained extensive vegetable gardens. Their daily existence followed a strict schedule: prayer, labor, simple meals, brief recreation, additional prayer, a pattern intended to direct attention toward divine service rather than individual comfort or personal desires. By the winter of 1854, the orphanage housed 12 children, predominantly offspring of Irish immigrant workers who had perished in railway or lumber accidents. Sister Elizabeth supervised their care with apparent compassion, teaching basic reading and numbers alongside Catholic doctrine. On Sundays, local families occasionally visited following Mass, bringing small treats for the children and sometimes inquiring about adoption. Sister Margaret's infirmary began modestly but quickly earned respect among area families. Her knowledge of traditional remedies, poultices for inflammation, herbal preparations for fevers, specialized compresses for respiratory conditions, proved particularly valuable during severe Wisconsin winters when doctor visits required dangerous travel through snow-blocked roads. This self-sufficiency impressed even the most doubtful neighbors, and gradually local attitudes shifted from suspicion to reluctant admiration. Even Elijah Hoffman grudgingly acknowledged to his congregation after Sister Margaret successfully treated his grandson's persistent cough, "They maintain to themselves, but they accomplish genuine good. Their ways differ from ours, yet perhaps this vast country accommodates multiple paths to heaven." Sister Agnes O'Connor, at 23 years old, counted among the youngest nuns at St. Mary's. Her correspondence home to Ireland, preserved in the Dublin Diocesan Archives, provides a rare window into the convent's early days. Her careful handwriting filled pages with observations about her new existence, though attentive readers might detect the progressively altering tone as months elapsed. In December 1854, she wrote, "The labor proves more demanding than I ever imagined." The paper showed smudges suggesting tears had fallen during composition. "My hands have become raw from washing linens in freezing water, and the chapel stones feel like ice beneath our knees during morning devotions. Yet Mother Catherine assures us our sacrifices please God." She continued, "Sister Elizabeth has shown remarkable kindness, assisting my adjustment to this unfamiliar country. She brings extra blankets during the coldest nights and has demonstrated such patience teaching me proper orphan care. Sister Margaret's remedy saved us during a fever that swept through the orphanage last month. The children burned with such intensity we feared losing them all. But her willow bark and honey mixture reduced their temperatures. I believe we perform God's work, though I confess I still cry myself to sleep some nights missing Ireland's green hills." What these letters failed to reveal, what Sister Agnes herself might not have fully grasped, were the subtle transformations already occurring within St. Mary's walls. Mother Catherine's leadership approach, initially merely strict, had begun evolving toward absolute authority. Minor rule infractions previously addressed with gentle correction now resulted in increasingly harsh penances. One evening in January 1855, Sister Josephine Brady's hands trembled as she attempted to mend a tear in her habit. Having accidentally broken silence during afternoon prayers with an unexpected cough, she had been assigned to kneel on dried peas while reciting the complete rosary, a punishment leaving her knees bleeding and swollen. Sister Mary Collins assisted her with threading the needle, their eyes meeting momentarily in silent understanding. Mother Catherine's voice cut through the quiet workroom, causing both women to startle. "Do not draw attention to her weakness." She had entered silently, a skill increasingly unsettling the younger sisters. "Sister Josephine must understand that discipline forms devotion's foundation. Each of you would benefit from remembering this." By spring 1855, St. Mary's had developed a reputation for exceptional charity. When a measles outbreak swept through nearby lumber camps, Sister Margaret's infirmary treated numerous workers regardless of religious affiliation. The convent began receiving modest donations from appreciative families, and even Protestant ministers acknowledged the good work occurring behind those limestone walls. What no outsider realized was that life within St. Mary's was transforming in subtle, disturbing ways. Community meals had become progressively silent affairs, with sisters keeping eyes fixed on bowls of thin soup or plain bread plates. The recreation hour, once filled with quiet conversation and occasional laughter, grew tense and subdued. Young women who had crossed an ocean together, united by common purpose and faith, now moved like shadows, careful not to attract attention. The first peculiar incident occurred in April 1855 when Sister Agnes failed to appear for morning prayers. Her absence was immediately noticeable, one empty position where 20 sisters should stand in perfect formation. The other nuns exchanged brief, concerned glances as Mother Catherine entered, her expression unreadable in the dim candlelight. At breakfast, Mother Catherine announced to the bewildered community, "Sister Agnes has been summoned to assist at our Minnesota mission." Her tone permitted no questions. Her departure was sudden, as such callings often are. We shall all pray for her success in this new endeavor. Sister Bernardet's spoon clattered against her bowl. "But Mother, she mentioned nothing to me, and we." She fell silent as Mother Catherine's pale eyes fixed upon her face. "Are you suggesting, Sister Bernardet, that a bride of Christ requires permission from her companions rather than her superiors before responding to divine calling?" The question hung in the air like frost. "No, Mother. Forgive me." Sister Bernardet lowered her eyes to her cooling porridge. No one had observed Sister Agnes pack or depart, and she had mentioned nothing of any transfer in her letters home. However, within the strict hierarchy of convent existence, no one dared question the Mother Superior's explanation further. That evening in the dormitory, several nuns noticed Sister Agnes's few possessions: her prayer book, the small wooden rosary her mother had given her, the extra woolen stockings for Wisconsin winters, all gone, as though she had indeed packed and departed. However, Sister Mary Collins, whose cot had been beside Agnes's, whispered to Sister Teresa Donovan during their brief moments alone in the garden. Her cloak still hung on its peg. Would she have left without it for Minnesota in April? Sister Teresa glanced nervously toward the convent windows. Perhaps they gave her a new one for the journey. We shouldn't speculate, Sister. 3 months later, Sister Bernardet Walsh vanished similarly. The bishop has requested Sister Bernardet's assistance with a delicate matter in Chicago, Mother Catherine explained. She departed before dawn to catch the early train. Again, no farewell, no warning, simply an empty cell and a hastily offered explanation. This time Sister Elizabeth elaborated during the nuns' work period. Sister Bernardet demonstrated such skill with the orphans that the bishop has requested her help establishing proper procedures at the new foundling home in Chicago. Her voice carried appropriate pride and pious acceptance, but Sister Mary noticed that her usually warm eyes remained cold as she spoke. By winter 1855, 3 additional nuns had transferred to distant missions. Each departure followed the same pattern. A young sister, typically one who had attracted attention for her beauty or gentle nature, would simply fail to appear one morning. Mother Catherine would announce her reassignment, always to a location too distant for convenient verification. Letters sent by worried families to these supposed new assignments would return months later with brief, oddly formal responses providing few details of their new lives. These responses, when examined years afterward by handwriting specialists, would all be identified as written by the same person, not the missing nuns themselves. Sister Teresa Donovan, tall and strong from years of farm work before taking vows, possessed a directness unusual in convent life and had already drawn Mother Catherine's disapproval for questioning the increasing severity of punishments assigned to younger nuns. As they worked in the garden during summer 1856, their fingers stained with soil while harvesting early carrots, she whispered to Sister Mary Collins, "It seems strange that Rome would request so many transfers without proper documentation." The garden had expanded that year with a new section dedicated to medicinal herbs that Sister Margaret tended personally behind a high fence accessible only to herself and Mother Catherine. "And have you noticed it's always the youngest and prettiest who are called away?" Sister Teresa continued, her Irish accent strengthening as it always did when she became upset. First Agnes with her golden hair, then Bernardet with that lovely singing voice, then Catherine with her perfect complexion, and Josephine with her. She trailed off as a shadow fell across the garden bed. Sister Mary hushed her immediately, glancing nervously toward the convent windows where Sister Margaret stood watching, her thin face expressionless. "Mother Catherine has her reasons. We must trust her wisdom." The following week, Sister Teresa was gone, called to a contemplative retreat in Montreal according to the official explanation provided at morning prayers. Sister Mary, now thoroughly terrified, kept her head down and her thoughts to herself. That evening while making her bed, she discovered a small piece of paper tucked beneath her pillow, a page torn from Sister Teresa's prayer book with a hastily scrawled message in the margin: "Something is wrong. If I disappear, tell Father Ryan." The sight of her friend's handwriting, the ink still relatively fresh, sent a chill through Sister Mary that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the stone walls. By 1857, the pattern had become impossible to ignore within the convent walls. Of the original 20 junior nuns, only 12 remained. Official explanations continued: special missions, retreats, transfers to nursing positions during disease outbreaks. To the outside world, St. Mary's continued functioning normally. Local families still brought sick relatives to Sister Margaret's infirmary. Orphans still received care in Sister Elizabeth's orphanage. Sunday visitors observed nothing amiss in the solemn processions of black-clad figures moving from chapel to garden to dining hall. But inside those limestone walls, fear had become a tangible presence. The remaining nuns spoke in whispers, avoided being alone, and watched in terror as their numbers dwindled. Mother Catherine's leadership grew increasingly authoritarian. Minor rule infractions resulted in severe penances, days of fasting, nights spent in prayer on cold stone floors, public confessions of increasingly intimate sins. Sister Claire O'Donnell, discovered with a small piece of chocolate sent by her family, was forced to kneel before the entire community and confess to gluttony and deception unworthy of a bride of Christ. Mother Catherine assigned her to fast for 3 days, taking only water and a single piece of bread at evening meal. When Sister Claire fainted during chapel prayers on the 2nd day, Sister Margaret revived her with smelling salts, her thin lips curving in what some later described as a smile. One unusually cold night in January 1858, Sister Mary Collins awoke to muffled sounds from the cell next to hers. Through the thin wall, she could hear Sister Rebecca Murphy sobbing, then a sharp whisper she recognized as Mother Catherine's voice, "You will come with us now. Make any noise and you'll regret it." The sound of shuffling feet followed, then silence. Sister Mary lay frozen in her narrow bed, heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray her wakefulness. The floorboards in the corridor creaked, 1, 2, 3 sets of footsteps moving away from Sister Rebecca's cell. Then a sound that would haunt Sister Mary's dreams for years to come, a muffled cry quickly silenced, followed by what sounded like a body being dragged rather than walking independently. The next morning, Mother Catherine announced that Sister Rebecca had been called to serve at a frontier mission in the Dakota Territory. The native children there require instruction, and Sister Rebecca's patience with the orphans has prepared her well for this holy task. Mother Catherine's pale eyes swept the dining hall, lingering momentarily on Sister Mary. We shall miss her gentle presence but rejoice in God's purpose for her talents. Sister Mary, shaking with fear, managed to maintain her composure through morning prayers. Her rosary beads clicked between trembling fingers as she mouthed familiar prayers, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. What had happened to Sister Rebecca? What had happened to all the others? That afternoon while sweeping the corridor outside Mother Catherine's office, she overheard a disturbing conversation. The heavy oak door was not quite closed, and voices carried clearly to where Sister Mary stood, dustbrush suddenly motionless in her hand. "The doctor says this one will fetch a higher price." Sister Elizabeth's usually gentle voice had taken on a cold, calculating tone Sister Mary would not have recognized had she not been listening at that very door. "He says men pay extra for the innocent ones." Sister Margaret replied, the sound of glass clinking suggesting she was organizing her medicines as she spoke. "We need to be more careful with the timing. 3 in 1 month raises questions." The bishop's secretary mentioned it in his last letter. The bishop is easily managed. Mother Catherine's dismissive laugh sent chills down Sister Mary's spine. "Another donation to his cathedral fund, and his questions will disappear. Besides, we've established the pattern well enough. No one questions nuns being sent to frontier missions or succumbing to illness during their charitable work." "What about the Collins girl?" Sister Margaret asked, her voice dropping lower. "She watches too closely. I've seen her listening at doors." A moment of silence followed, during which Sister Mary's heart nearly stopped. "We'll wait," Mother Catherine finally replied. "She's too plain to fetch much, and she has that correspondence with her brother in the seminary. Disappearing too many at once attracts attention. Rebecca will keep the doctor's clients satisfied for now." Sister Mary fled before she could be discovered, her mind racing. What had happened to her missing sisters? What terrible fate had befallen Sister Rebecca just last night? And who was this doctor they mentioned? The pieces began to fall into terrible place in her mind, the missing nuns, always the youngest and most attractive, the strange visits from well-dressed benefactors who toured the convent with Mother Catherine, the unexplained sounds sometimes heard from the locked north wing at night, the growing wealth of the convent despite its supposedly humble means. After a sleepless night of prayer and deliberation, Sister Mary made a desperate decision. During her weekly duty collecting eggs from the chicken coop, the only time she was permitted beyond the convent walls without supervision, she slipped a hastily written note into the pocket of Jimmy Fletcher, the 12-year-old son of a local farmer who delivered milk to the convent each morning. Jimmy's eyes widened as Sister Mary's hand brushed his pocket. She had never spoken to him directly before. The rules forbade casual conversation with outsiders, especially males of any age. "Please deliver this to Father Thomas at St. Joseph's Church in town," she whispered, pressing a small silver cross into the boy's hand. The cross had been her confirmation gift, the only item of value she possessed. "Tell no one else. Lives depend on it." The boy nodded solemnly, his freckled face serious beyond his years. "Yes, sister. I promise." The note, preserved in diocesan records, read simply, "Something evil happens at St. Mary's. Nuns disappearing, not sent away as claimed. I fear for my life. Please send help. Sister Mary Collins." Father Thomas Ryan, the young Irish priest who received the note, had always harbored reservations about Mother Catherine. During his monthly visits to offer Mass at the convent, he had noticed the dwindling number of nuns and found Mother Catherine's explanations vague and inconsistent. But as a mere parish priest, he had limited authority to question a Mother Superior. Father Ryan paced his small study, the worn floorboards creaking beneath his feet as he read and reread Sister Mary's desperate message. The silver cross lay heavy in his palm. He recognized it as the type given to young women at confirmation, not something a nun would part with lightly. The urgency of the message, combined with his own growing concerns, demanded action. But what action could he take against a Mother Superior, especially one as well connected as Catherine Murphy? Rather than confronting Mother Catherine directly, Father Ryan traveled to Milwaukee to speak with his superior, Bishop John Henney. The journey took a full day by horseback, the late winter roads alternating between ice and mud. He arrived at the bishop's residence with his cassock spattered and his resolve firm. Bishop Henney received him in a comfortably appointed study, far warmer and more luxurious than Father Ryan's humble parish house. Construction of Milwaukee's new St. John's Cathedral dominated the conversation initially, the bishop proudly showing architectural drawings and discussing funding with animation. "It will be the finest cathedral west of New York," Bishop Henney declared, his German accent still pronounced despite decades in America. "A proper monument to our faith in this Protestant wilderness." Father Ryan nodded appropriately, waiting for an opening to introduce his concerns. When the bishop finally asked about his parish, the young priest carefully laid out his observations, the dwindling number of nuns at St. Mary's, the inconsistent explanations, and finally the desperate note from Sister Mary. The bishop's expression changed as Father Ryan spoke, his initial warmth giving way to a careful neutrality. "These are serious accusations, Father," he said, setting aside the silver cross without examining it closely. "Mother Catherine has explained each transfer to my satisfaction." "But Your Excellency, 8 nuns have disappeared in less than 3 years, Father Ryan pressed. "No documentation has been provided for these transfers. No one has received consistent correspondence from these women after they supposedly left. The frontier missions require educated women," the bishop replied with finality, rising from his chair to indicate the meeting was concluding. "I'll not have you spreading rumors that could damage the Church's reputation in this Protestant region. Mother Catherine has been most generous in supporting our cathedral building fund. Her spiritual leadership is beyond reproach." As the bishop ushered him out, he added with a note of warning, "Focus on your parish duties, Father Ryan. Leave the administration of convents to those appointed by God for that purpose." Father Ryan left the bishop's office discouraged but not deterred. If the proper channels would not address his concerns, he would need to find another way to investigate the mysterious disappearances at St. Mary's. The opportunity came in March 1858 when Bishop Henney assigned Father Ryan to collect the annual financial reports from parishes and religious institutions throughout the diocese. This official capacity gave him legitimate reason to examine St. Mary's records and perhaps find evidence of what had happened to the missing nuns. The March winds cut through Father Ryan's heavy coat as his horse-drawn buggy approached St. Mary's. The convent looked different somehow, the gardens more neglected, the windows darker, despite the mild spring weather that should have brought the nuns outdoors for their work. The bell tower that had once rung clearly for each divine office now sounded less frequently, its tone somehow muted. He was met at the door by Sister Elizabeth, whose customary smile seemed strained. Dark circles beneath her eyes suggested sleepless nights, and her typically neat habit showed small signs of neglect, a missing pin, a slight stain on the white collar. "Father Ryan, we weren't expecting you today," she said, her surprise poorly concealed. "Mother Catherine is indisposed," she continued, leading him to a small cold parlor rather than the comfortable study where he usually met with the Mother Superior. She asks that you leave the diocesan forms, and she will complete them by week's end. I'm afraid the bishop was quite clear, Father Ryan insisted, removing his coat and setting his briefcase on the table. He tried to project an authority he didn't entirely feel, aware that his youth and relatively low position in the church hierarchy worked against him. I am to review the records personally this year. Financial irregularities have been discovered in several institutions. Sister Elizabeth's smile vanished entirely. That won't be possible today. Our bookkeeper, Sister Margaret, is attending to a dying child in the infirmary. Then I shall wait. Father Ryan settled more firmly in his chair. Or perhaps I could tour the convent while waiting. It has been some time since I've seen the improvements to the orphanage I've heard so much about. The look that flashed across Sister Elizabeth's face, was it fear? Anger, vanished quickly. As you wish, Father, though I must ask you to avoid the north wing. We have several cases of influenza there and would not want you exposed. The north wing, where Father Ryan had never been permitted to enter, ostensibly because it contained the nuns' private quarters. His suspicion deepened. The tour revealed a convent functioning far below its reported capacity. Where were the 20 orphans mentioned in Mother Catherine's reports to the diocese? Father Ryan counted only 7 children, all looking thin and frightened. When he attempted to speak with a small girl sweeping the dormitory floor, Sister Elizabeth quickly intervened, sending the child away on an errand. The infirmary, supposedly caring for dozens of local residents, contained only 3 elderly patients, none showing signs of the reported influenza. Sister Margaret was nowhere to be seen despite her supposed attendance on a dying child. Most disturbing was the clear reduction in nuns. Father Ryan had offered Mass at St. Mary's just 3 months earlier and recalled at least 15 nuns in attendance. Today he counted only 8, including Sister Elizabeth. When he inquired about specific nuns he remembered, Sister Rebecca, Sister Josephine, Sister Claire, he received the same vague responses about transfers and special missions. And Sister Mary Collins, he asked casually as they passed the laundry room, where 2 nuns worked silently at large wash tubs, steam rising around their reddened hands. Sister Elizabeth's step faltered slightly. Sister Mary has been assigned to our mission in St. Louis. She left just last week. Her experience with the orphans made her particularly suited to the work there. Father Ryan nodded, hiding his alarm. The author of the desperate note was now among the disappeared. His suspicions now fully aroused, he requested to see the convent's chapel before departing. The chapel, once immaculate, showed subtle signs of neglect, dust on the altar rails, unpolished candlesticks, wilting flowers that should have been replaced. The sacred space that had once housed 23 nuns in prayer now felt hollow, as if the very stones sensed the wrongness that had infiltrated St. Mary's. While Sister Elizabeth was momentarily distracted by a message from a novice, Father Ryan slipped through a side door he knew led to the residential wing. The corridor was eerily silent for mid-afternoon. Many of the cells stood empty, personal items gone, as if their occupants had indeed departed. As he turned to leave, a barely audible sound caught his attention, something between a whimper and a moan coming from behind a heavy wooden door at the end of the corridor. The door, unlike the others, had a substantial iron lock. Father Ryan approached cautiously, listening intently. The sound came again, definitely human, definitely distressed. "Is someone there?" he whispered through the keyhole. "Do you need help?" A moment of silence, then a hoarse female voice, "Father, Father, is that you? Please help us, please." Before he could respond, the unmistakable voice of Mother Catherine rang out behind him, "Father Ryan, this area is strictly cloistered. Your presence here is most inappropriate." He turned to find Mother Catherine, flanked by Sister Margaret, and a large man he didn't recognize, not dressed as clergy or medical personnel, but in the rough clothing of a laborer with arms thick as tree trunks and a face set in a threatening scowl. "Forgive me, Mother," Father Ryan managed, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I became turned around after visiting the chapel." Mother Catherine's pale eyes assessed him coldly. She had lost weight since he'd last seen her, her habit hanging loosely on her frame, but her authority seemed only to have intensified. This wing houses sisters under special spiritual direction. Their seclusion is essential to their devotional practice. "I heard someone calling for help," Father Ryan countered, gathering his courage. "You heard, sister," and in the midst of her spiritual exercises, Sister Margaret interjected smoothly. "Some of our more dedicated sisters practice mortification of the flesh. Their cries can be misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with advanced devotional practices. Mr. Callahan will show you out." Mother Catherine nodded to the burly men. "We will send the financial reports to Milwaukee by week's end." The man named Callahan stepped forward, his posture suggesting he was accustomed to enforcing Mother Catherine's will through means not entirely spiritual. "This way, Father," he said, his voice carrying a hint of menace beneath the forced politeness. The man gripped his arm with unnecessary force. Father Ryan caught one last glimpse of the locked door. Who had spoken to him? What did she mean by us? How many women were being held behind that door? The moment his buggy cleared the convent gates, Father Ryan whipped his horse into a gallop, his mind racing faster than the animal's hooves. The voice, the locked door, the missing nuns, the frightened children, the intimidating presence of the men called Callahan, all pointed to something sinister occurring at St. Mary's. This was beyond his authority as a parish priest. He needed official intervention. Bypassing Bishop Henny, whom he now suspected of either complicity or willful ignorance, Father Ryan sent an urgent telegram to Archbishop John Hughes in New York, grave concerns regarding St. Mary's Convent, Wisconsin. Suspicious disappearances of multiple nuns, evidence of imprisonment, possible danger to remaining sisters. Request immediate diocesan investigation. Local bishop unresponsive. Father Thomas Ryan, St. Joseph's Parish. If you're feeling a chill down your spine as our story unfolds, you're not alone. Our community of mystery seekers often reports physical reactions to these dark historical accounts. Take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who appreciates true historical mysteries. Your engagement helps us continue uncovering America's hidden secrets. Now, as we return to 1858, a storm is brewing over St. Mary's Convent that will reveal horrors beyond imagination. Archbishop Hughes, known for his no-nonsense approach to diocesan management, responded swiftly. Rather than alerting Bishop Henny, he dispatched his personal secretary, Monsignor Patrick Kelly, to conduct a surprise inspection of St. Mary's. Monsignor Kelly arrived unannounced at the convent gates on April 17, 1858, accompanied by Father Ryan and two senior priests from neighboring parishes. The spring day dawned clear and mild, the kind of day that typically filled Wisconsin farmers with hope for the coming planting season. But as the clerical party approached St. Mary's, a sense of foreboding seemed to hang over the limestone buildings. Ravens circled the bell tower, their harsh cries breaking the morning stillness. The reception they received spoke volumes. Mother Catherine, usually composed and commanding, appeared flustered by their arrival, her pale face flushed with what might have been anger or fear, as she recognized Monsignor Kelly's official robes and the sealed documents he carried. The convent itself seemed in disarray, with nuns scurrying about in what appeared to be panicked activity. Through an open window, Father Ryan glimpsed two young nuns hastily carrying armfuls of papers toward the kitchen, where the large cast-iron stove burned regardless of the season's warmth. The acrid smell of burning paper drifted through the courtyard. "This is most irregular, Monsignor," Mother Catherine protested as the clerical party entered the main hall. Her voice, usually controlled and melodious, had taken on a brittle edge. "We have protocols for official visitations. Bishop Henny always sends word weeks in advance. Which is precisely why Archbishop Hughes instructed me to forego such notification," Monsignor Kelly replied coolly. In his 50s, with silver hair and the weathered face of a man who had seen both war and peace, the Monsignor projected an authority that even Mother Catherine seemed unable to challenge directly. "I have here a letter bearing the Archbishop's seal, authorizing a complete inspection of this institution, its records, and all its residents. I trust you will cooperate fully." Mother Catherine's eyes darted briefly to Sister Margaret, who stood half-hidden in a doorway, her thin face unreadable. Some silent communication seemed to pass between them before Mother Catherine turned back to Monsignor Kelly with a forced smile. "Of course, Monsignor. St. Mary's has nothing to hide. However, I must insist that you respect the enclosure of our cloistered sisters. Some are engaged in spiritual exercises that must not be interrupted. My authority extends to all areas of this convent, Mother Catherine, Monsignor Kelly replied, unfolding the Archbishop's letter and holding it before her. No exceptions. What followed was a day-long investigation that would later be described in Monsignor Kelly's 40-page report as unveiling a tableau of horrors unprecedented in the modern church. The inspection team split up, with Father Ryan leading Monsignor Kelly directly to the locked door in the residential wing while the other priests began interviewing the visible nuns and examining financial records. As they approached the north wing, they encountered Sister Elizabeth blocking the corridor, her usually pleasant face set in uncharacteristic determination. Mother Catherine has forbidden entrance to this area, Monsignor. We have sisters in spiritual retreat. Sister Elizabeth, Monsignor Kelly said gently but firmly, I speak with the authority of Archbishop Hughes. Open the door or I shall be forced to consider you in violation of your vow of obedience. Sister Elizabeth's composure cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're doing, she whispered, her voice suddenly desperate. He will be most displeased. He. Father Ryan questioned. Do you mean Bishop Henny? Sister Elizabeth merely shook her head, eyes darting nervously toward the windows as if expecting someone to appear. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped aside. The locked door, when finally opened under threat of ecclesiastical censure, revealed a shocking scene. 5 nuns, including the missing Sister Rebecca, were confined in what had once been a storage room. The space, perhaps 15 feet square, contained only a chamber pot in the corner and thin pallets on the floor. The single high window had been boarded over, leaving the room in near darkness, save for the light now streaming through the open door. The women were pale, malnourished, and showed signs of physical abuse. Their habits were torn and soiled, their faces gaunt with hunger and fear. One, later identified as Sister Josephine Brady, was heavily pregnant, her swollen belly incongruous against her thin limbs. The stench of unwashed bodies and human waste was overwhelming. Father Ryan turned aside momentarily, fighting nausea, while Monsignor Kelly crossed himself in horror. In the name of all that's holy, the Monsignor whispered. What has happened here? Sister Rebecca, once robust and quick to smile, now a skeletal figure with hollow eyes, struggled to her feet. Father Ryan, she managed, her voice cracked from disuse or screaming, you came back. They're preparing us, she whispered as Father Ryan helped her to a chair hastily brought from the corridor. For the doctor. For the house in Chicago. What doctor? Monsignor Kelly asked gently, kneeling beside her despite his age and dignity. What house in Chicago? Dr. Matthews, Sister Rebecca replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. He comes to examine us, to see which ones are suitable. She closed her eyes, trembling. The men pay more for nuns, for brides of Christ. That's what Mother Catherine tells them. While Father Ryan and Monsignor Kelly attended to the imprisoned nuns, ensuring